When you're running for office, your name is on the ballot. So why not have your website be your name? If your name is John Smith, you need a .vote web address that says www.johnsmith.vote. 2022 will come faster than you think. Visit GoDaddy today and kick off your new campaign with a new personalized web address.
Welcome to another episode of Breaking Battlegrounds with your host, Chuck Warren. I'm Sam Stone. Our first guest on the line today, Matt Pinnell, the 17th Lieutenant Governor of Oklahoma. Oklahoma elects their Lieutenant Governor. Matt, welcome to the program.
Hey, well, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate the time.
So, Matt, how has your family reacted to having their dad be an elected official in the public eye? People, obviously, I'm sure you go to restaurants, people want to shake your hand or complain about something, probably more complaining. How have they responded, especially the kids?
Yeah, we've got 4 kiddos, and, I was the chairman of the Oklahoma Republican Party, run a bunch of campaigns before I was lieutenant governor. So, they knew politics. They had been to political events, but this is different. It is different when we do have people that want to talk to us about some burning political issue in the grocery store or restaurant from time to time. But when Dad gets in the car and drives to the state capitol, it would be like me driving to work at any other job. And so I am blessed from that perspective that the job doesn't affect them too much. They think, for the most part, they think it's cool. They like some of the events that I get to go to. A lot of the events they don't want to attend, political events, but they're from time to time we get to do something kind of fun, and they like going with me to some of those fun events.
Do you let them know that you don't want to go to all the political events as well? He just shakes
Chuck,
his head.
you're not supposed to
answer.
You're not supposed to put him on the spot like that this early.
So,
I'm sorry, you cut out there. What did you say?
During COVID, you have really done, what I have read, you have done a fantastic job on Oklahoma tourism. Now, us being here in Phoenix, Scottsdale, I don't know, we're a bit snobby about tourism, right? I mean, come out, play golf, see some games. But you've really pushed this. How has that gone, and how have you been able to attract a number of people, because you've increased tourism?
Yeah, we have. So, Oklahoma, very unique state from a tourism perspective. Obviously, our Native American heritage and history is very interesting. And I would say that the same for a state like Arizona as well. Arizona really leans into Native American heritage and history. You also have some Route 66 miles as well. So actually, even just talking this out, there's
Matt, what we have is spring training.
Yeah.
Now, there you go. Yeah. And some golf, which I have frequented a number of times, a number of your golf courses. So I like to say tourism is the front door to economic development. When you can get people to your state, whether it be a baseball game, playing around a golf, Route 66 for us, Native American heritage, cowboys and Indians in some ways. When we can get people to Oklahoma, we sell really well. We have 39 sovereign nations inside of one state, which is actually pretty remarkable to think about.
Wow.
So that industry, our tourism industry, it's the 3rd largest industry in the state of Oklahoma. So when we can get people here, we sell well, which then we can have all the other conversations that we want to have with these people that, hey, yes, it doesn't take you an hour and a half to get to work. And we have very friendly people. We're very affordable. And when people get back in their cars and drive back to wherever they were coming from, they have those conversations. Hey, I'm sick and tired of living in that other city and that other state. And maybe we need to come back to Oklahoma and do a deeper dive because we may want to move there. We've seen a lot of that in Oklahoma, one of the fastest growing states over the last few years as far as in-migration growth. And that's something we're really proud of. A lot of people taking a look at Oklahoma for the very first time. Some of that due to COVID. Just people being sick and tired of being sick and tired in other cities and other states. and Oklahoma's reaped the benefits of that.
Well, and you have an enormous range of environments in Oklahoma, right? I mean, you have everything from desert to what when you're down in southeastern Oklahoma, it's almost a rainforest.
That's right.
But on top of that, you guys have invested tremendously, especially around the Oklahoma City area, in things that draw people, that make the quality of living there tremendous. It always ranks near the top of various mid-sized cities' quality of living index.
Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma City now is the 20th largest city in America, which when you say that, I mean, people are pretty wowed by that fact. The modern frontier is what they are trying to sell now in Oklahoma City, changing some of those perceptions, to your point, of what is there actually to do in Oklahoma. Well, yeah, we got 12 different ecosystems inside the state of Oklahoma, and we've built world-class attractions, world-class quality of life in a lot of our bigger cities in the state of Oklahoma, to where, again, when someone visits Oklahoma and they see that, they're thinking to themselves, again, I had no idea Oklahoma had this. And again, if it takes a traveling sports team or a conference for them to come to Oklahoma City or Tulsa or any of our other communities, small or large, we usually do a really good job of showing off. And that helps us lead to other conversations that we want to have. But the quality of life that we've built, we can put that up against any major city in America today.
We're with Oklahoma's 17th Lieutenant Governor, Matt Pinnell. Matt, so give people, what exactly are the responsibilities for Oklahoma's Lieutenant Governor?
Yeah, so in Oklahoma, it's different in every state, but in Oklahoma, I'm president of the state Senate constitutionally. I don't preside every day over the Senate, but I preside a number of times throughout our legislative session. I sit on a number of boards and commissions. I'm on the Equalization Board, which means I certify all the dollars that the legislature has to spend. But one of my biggest roles is I'm Secretary of Tourism, and that is not something that every lieutenant governor has had historically, but I asked our governor for that role. I wanted to have a job where I oversaw an agency, and I certainly have those responsibilities as Secretary of Tourism with this, again, as large of an industry as it is. And so I would say I spend about 50% of my time with the tourism department and the other 50% of my time with our Department of Commerce. Small business growth historically in Oklahoma has been a job of the lieutenant governor. The last lieutenant governor was kind of the small business advocate on the governor's cabinet. And I've kind of took that baton from our last lieutenant governor and still actively involved. Main Street program that we have in the state of Oklahoma, I'm very involved in that. And so that's kind of my portfolio, if that's the way to put it, of where I spend my day. Right now, I'm at the state capitol because we're in legislative session February through May.
Okay.
And so I'm here most of that time working on different pieces of legislation. But commerce and tourism is where I spend most of my time.
What is some legislation in Oklahoma right now that's being pushed forward that you're excited about?
Yeah, in Oklahoma right now, I mean, the big issue is, I would say, school choice legislation, which Arizona has been a leader on. The governor in the state has been trying to get that done for the last few years, kind of expanding our school choice inside the state of Oklahoma. We're also trying to do a big teacher pay raise. We have a sales tax on groceries in Oklahoma. We're one of only 12 states that still has a sales tax on groceries. We're trying to eliminate the state portion of sales tax on groceries. Those are a couple big issues. I'm trying to raise the cap on our promotional fund to allow our Department of Tourism to have a little bit more money to, again, invite people to the state of Oklahoma. That's a bill that I'm working on this session. But the big issue that is kind of holding up everything else right now is the negotiation between the House and the Senate on our education bills.
Yeah, Matt, in that line, you in 2022 launched a look at Oklahoma Career Tech, a video interview series that showcases the education and employment opportunities the state's career tech system provides. In working on educational issues around the country, Oklahoma's career and technical education system is a model for the rest of the country. How big a deal has that been for Oklahoma's growth? And what would you tell other states that are looking at investing in that area?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Mike Rowe. I hope Mike runs for president someday, way down in the future. But Mike's been in Oklahoma a number of times over the last few years, and I think he gets it. I mean, we should be talking about technical education, technicals, our tech schools, just as much as we're talking about college. I need just as many kids in Oklahoma and, frankly, every other state to close a skills gap that we have in this country. We have far too many kids graduating from high school and college that don't even know how to change a tire or know how to read a ruler anymore. And that's a problem. We took shop class out of high schools decades and decades ago, and now we've woken up to the harsh reality that there's many small business owners in Arizona and Oklahoma and in every state in between that is in desperate need of skilled labor. And in Oklahoma, our career tech system is a model. It is because we have infrastructure across the state of Oklahoma, and it's locally funded. They don't rely upon our state capital that much for funding. And it's very nimble. We can put curriculum in place and get people trained within 18 months and then put them out into a workforce and make over $100,000 a year. And I'm not just talking about carpentry and plumbing and those type of skills, which we definitely need. But I'm talking about nursing programs, accounting. Our career tech system in Oklahoma now has multiple career paths that we're very excited about because that's helping keep more homegrown talent in the state of Oklahoma.
Your high-tech sector, we have just about a minute left before we go to break, but your high-tech sector has actually been growing really fast. Is coding a part of that as well?
Yeah, it is. And we have a number of accelerators and incubators around the state of Oklahoma in that coding space that, again, you talk about the number of jobs in this country in that coding space. We have aviation and aerospace is the number 2 industry in the state of Oklahoma today, which is, I think, will be the number 1 industry in Oklahoma within the next 10 years. Again, from a manufacturing perspective and coding, a lot of those jobs are needed in that aerospace industry as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The jobs of the future, Chuck, are not simple, but you don't need a 4-year degree for a lot of the best ones.
I was reading the other day, there's like 120,000 plus shortage of welders in the country, and those pay 6 digits.
Yeah, those are fantastic jobs. Folks, we're going to be coming back with more in just a moment from Matt Pinnell, the 17th Lieutenant Governor of Oklahoma. I want to touch on the transformation of Oklahoma from blue to red. It's one of the more striking stories Republicans should take note of. Breaking Battlegrounds will be back in just a moment. Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds with your host, Chuck Warren. I'm Sam Stone. Folks, are you concerned with stock market volatility, especially with Joe Biden in office? What if you could invest in a portfolio with a high fixed rate of return that's not correlated to the stock market? A portfolio where you'll know what each monthly statement will look like with no surprises. You can turn your monthly income on or off, compound it, whatever you choose. There's no loss of principal. If you need your money back at any time, your interest is compounded daily, you're paid monthly, and there are no fees. This is a secure, collateralized portfolio that delivers a high fixed interest rate, and by investing, you can actually do well by doing good. YRefi is a due diligence-approved firm. You can earn up to a 10.25% rate of return. That's right, 10.25%. Just log on to investYRefi.com. That's invest, the letter Y, then REFY.com, or call them at 888-YRefi24 and tell them Chuck and Sam sent you.
So Sam had a great question before the break. Oklahoma has been one of those states that has done a transformation from being a blue state to a red state. What do you attribute that to?
A lot of it started nationally. The national narrative. I mean, a Democrat Party that went so far left that you had, blue dog Democrats in Oklahoma, very rural parts of the state of Oklahoma where, You had very conservative Democrats that
blue
said,
dog,
hey,
blue collar Democrats, right?
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. We have 77 counties in Oklahoma. 70 plus, probably 70 of them are pretty rural. And a lot of those counties 15 years ago were heavily Democrat counties, but those are conservative Democrats. Those were Democrats that they were registered Democrats so they could vote for their local sheriffs. And when they started seeing this national narrative from Democrats, back then I was the state Republican Party chairman in Oklahoma back then. I would start going into some of these very Democrat counties, and they would be re-registering as a Republican right there. It was kind of that enough is enough, kind of that Reagan line, right? I didn't leave the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party left me. And that happened in Oklahoma. And it happened very quickly. This was a Democrat registered state less than 10 years ago. And now it is completely flipped. And every single county is now red. Every single county has a more Republicans than Democrats. Some of the urban areas are more competitive. That's a trend that you're seeing in some other states. But it really started nationally, guys, that your blue collar, to your point, your blue collar Democrats in rural parts of Oklahoma were like, this is not the Democrat Party that I grew up around. This isn't the Democrat Party that my mom and dad told me about. And if this is the new Democrat Party, I'm getting out.
Well, think about that. So you were chairman of the Oklahoma Republican Party, what, a decade ago? Decade plus?
Decade ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't you wish you were dealing with the Democrats then than today? I mean, they've gone further left. You almost wish we had those Democrats today. Yeah.
No, that's right. That's right. And now it's from a candidate recruitment perspective and some of the culture wars that, yes, we're in. Every cycle is different. But man, you're right. 14 years ago, I was dealing with a different Democrat Party. You got some urban Democrats in Oklahoma that are carrying the mantle, that carrying the narrative and the talking points from a national Democrat perspective. But in about 70 plus counties in Oklahoma, that narrative doesn't work, and it doesn't work in most of our urban areas either. But it is pretty remarkable how much Oklahoma has changed over the last decade.
We're with Oklahoma Lieutenant Governor Matt Pinnell. Matt, when you were elected, you were the 17th Lieutenant Governor. Did any of your previous lieutenant governors talk to you? What's the best advice someone gave you when you took office? That's proved to be true.
Sure. I still, good point. I still have the note from the previous Lieutenant Governor, Todd Lamb. Who better to give advice, right, than the person that I'm following. He's also served for 8 years as Lieutenant Governor. And he had a note, be careful and guard yourself about busyness and being busy just to be active around the state. And how true that is. I mean, I remember getting elected in this position, and I wanted to be everywhere. I wanted to say yes to every event. And I've had to learn how to say no. I've had to learn how to delegate. It is still, hard at times. I've got 4 kids and a wife at home, and my wife runs a small business. And so she puts up some very good guardrails for me already, but just being busy doesn't mean you're being effective.
Okay.
And that in the public or private sector, I think that is a very good lesson, and one that I continue to try to remind myself of on a daily basis.
Matt, I have to ask, because Chuck and I have worked on races pretty much all over the country at this point, and I have to say, Oklahoma political events have by far the best food.
Oh, yeah.
Any political events in the country.
That's important.
It's delicious.
Yes.
And you're still a fit guy.
Yeah.
So I need to know the secret of how you've
What
pulled
is the
this
routine?
off.
What is the routine?
How have you gotten rid of all that brisket?
And I eat a lot of brisket. I do. I run. I'm a runner. I don't bike. I lift. I don't really lift a whole lot of weights. It's running. It's stress running. I run a lot. I probably run. So my whole mantra is 5K every other day.
Okay.
So I run a 5K, at least a 5K every other day. Some stressful weeks I run every day, but I don't put that pressure on me. But I run a lot, and that has kept most of the weight off, is just running.
What is the one advice you would give a first-time candidate for statewide office? Something that you thought originally should be, but you learned through the trail, this is what should happen.
Yeah, I mean, for a statewide, it is a money game. Unfortunately, I have to say that. A lot of times with a statewide race, it's who makes the best 30-second movie, who makes the best 30-second TV ad. You have to develop relationships with the donor community across the state to be able to raise those resources to run a statewide race, and which means you have to have your pitch down. If you get a donor on the phone and you think you're going to have a 15-minute conversation about energy policy, you're going to lose that donor pretty quick. At least 9 out of 10 of them.
Matt, we have just about a minute before we go to break, but I thought you brought up a really important point there when you talk about going around and cultivating those relationships with the donor community. A lot of times our base is dismissive of those business interests and the people behind them, and that's a huge mistake when that's the case, isn't it?
It absolutely is a mistake, and that's something that in Oklahoma we've done a pretty good job of as a Republican Party, is make sure our grassroots base understands how important those businesses are, in a lot of ways how conservative they are as well. We make sure we combine those two so that the grassroots understands how important the corporate world is,
exactly.
How important that is, and how important those jobs are.
Matt Pinnell, 17th Lieutenant Governor, who avoids busyness, from Oklahoma with us today. Matt, thanks a lot, my friend. It's so good seeing you.
Man, it's great seeing you.
How do folks follow you on social media?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm very active on Twitter, LTGov Pinnell. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, but probably Twitter and Facebook, Instagram as well. Those are kind of the 3 social media channels that we're usually posting on a daily basis.
We'll see you at the turkey hunt this year, my friend. Have a great.
Absolutely. Great.
See you, buddy. Appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Breaking Battlegrounds back in just a moment. All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds with your host, Chuck Warren. I'm Sam Stone. On the line with us next, Congressman Barry Moore of Alabama's 2nd District, a veteran and small business owner, and former member of the Alabama State House. Congressman, welcome to Breaking Battlegrounds.
Well, thank you. Good to be on.
Congressman, this week, Biden's press secretary, Jean-Pierre, said that the fentanyl crisis is basically the Republicans' fault. Could you explain to our audience why this is just a ludicrous statement?
Well, we just know that not to be true. I mean, not that this administration would ever lie to the American people, but, 50 years ago, Nixon started a war on drugs with 6,000 deaths in America. We had 107,000 deaths in the last 24 months since the Biden administration have taken control, or not have lost control of the U.S. southern border, I should say. And so that fentanyl is the number 1 killer, but, for young Americans 18 to 45 right now. And it's just unbelievable to me that they can get up there with a straight face and say somehow that's our fault. We have brought tons of opportunities for them to go to the border with us, to see what's going on down there, to observe with their own eyes. And there are testimony after testimony that simply says that Biden has lost operational control of the U.S. southern border, and it's killing American people. And not only that, we're trafficking children for other countries into America, into slavery.
It's unbelievable. For the first time in recorded history, people are dying sooner in this country than they used to, and it's really a result of the fentanyl crisis.
No doubt about it.
Reading this morning, the Republicans are going to come back from this brief recess and come back and propose some border measures, some strong legislation to secure our border. What are some of the things that will be in that bill?
I think one of the most impactful things is just the asylum claims and how that they're painting that such a broad brush right now. We're going to say these children that are coming here and people that are coming to claim asylum, they need to remain in the country. Like Trump had the remain in Mexico policies, right? And right now, guys, when you come across that southern border down there, our border agents are nothing more than concierge. They just process your paperwork. They make you eligible under some claim for taxpayer-funded subsidies, and they give you a cell phone to call you on your court date, but 95% of those people are not taking our calls. And so the process where we just say, okay, you go remain in your country, and we're going to try to return those children to their homes, those are things that just need to happen because they know if they come here, we're going to take care of them, we're going to give them government subsidies with a cell phone, and we're going to ship them to wherever. The problem with that is that encourages people to flow across the border. We've got to put an end to that. So that's one of the things I think is most impactful.
One of the guests on our show had a great idea. Maybe you can push this to be in the bill, that unless you come to a port of entry, your asylum request is denied, period. You got to come to the front door, more or less, as she called the port of entry. What do you think about something like that? It's just immediately dismissal of your asylum claim if you don't come to a port of entry.
I think that's an excellent idea because, like you said, that automatically shuts the flow off. It takes the pressure off the border agents and puts the people back to where they should be coming, which is through our port of entry.
Congressman, the Biden administration just announced that in response to the end of Title 42, they're looking at opening refugee processing centers or asylum processing centers in throughout Latin America. I guess the concern is if it's like you just said, it's a remain in whatever and we'll process the claim. That's one thing. But this strikes me with this administration in control that you're just going to end up with U.S. chartered flights bringing them here instead of them having to travel to the border.
Yeah, we're just going to remove one step for the cartel. But the cartel always knows how to bypass us on these issues. And guys, you're right. I mean, if we set up those claims and just start flying directly into cities, then who is taking custody of those people when they land, especially the unaccompanied minors? And that's a huge concern for us right now. Is we have thousands of children that are being trafficked a day. And I was at the emergency intake center in Fort Bliss. I'm filming these buses leaving with these kids, and we're shipping them to Google addresses and not background checking the people we're shipping them to.
Oh, my goodness.
Are you kidding? Are they really
doing
that?
No, I'm not kidding at all. We don't background check those people. And we have some people that say they're sponsors for 30 children at a time. And, guys, they're nothing more than sex traffickers and child slave. And our government, we are part of the process. We are basically the slave ships of the 1800s right now, and it's the Biden administration shipping these children to people who are going to do God knows what and God knows where.
It's unbelievable, and Congressman, I think you made a great point because a lot of folks out there don't understand you do not come across this border without the cartel's permission. You have to pay them. You have to be part of that, and that often ends up in sex trafficking, indentured servitude, a lifetime of pain and suffering for these people. We have just about a minute before we go to break. Congressman, how do folks keep up with you and your work? How do they stay on top of the great stuff you're doing?
So they can follow us on Facebook. It's Rep Barrymore, and then we got Instagram. It's US Rep Barrymore, and we got a Twitter. My personal Twitter got taken down after Trump's got taken down, but I have an official Twitter that still has a little blue check mark. I would encourage people to follow us and see what's going on behind the curtain in D.C.
30 seconds.
And Congressman, I got to say, I am impressed that you have the Instagram account going. Not enough of the elected officials on our side have Instagram.
No, they do not.
And it's one of those ways that we try to do what we can to let people know what's going on. So that's just another tool for us.
In reaching a whole different demographic than those other social media. That's fantastic. Congressman, Breaking Battlegrounds will be coming back with more in just a moment from Congressman Barrymore.
And you're clear.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds with your host, Chuck Warren. I'm Sam Stone. Folks, are you concerned with stock market volatility, especially with Joe Biden in office? What if you could earn up to a 10.25 fixed rate of return on a secure collateralized portfolio, a fantastic way to protect your money from the risk of the stock market? Check out our friends at investyrefi.com. That's invest, the letter Y, then refy.com, or call them at 888-YREFI24 and tell them Chuck and Sam sent you.
Congressman, this week, House Republicans passed the Limit, Save, and Grow Act of 2023. This will return spending to fiscal year 22 levels, save taxpayers $4.5 trillion, and allow, which I think is the most important aspect of this bill, allow a 1% annual growth, which is really going to be a big step to taming this budget. Tell folks more about this so they understand what Republicans have done, because, of course, whenever you propose something that saves money, and in this case, you're still doing 1% growth, so you and I and Sam would consider that a growing budget. Democrats are saying dogs and cats are falling from the sky. People are going to die. They're going to starve. You know,
anytime you don't give Democrats everything they want, you've just cut
everybody.
everything
Yeah,
out
everybody
from
dies.
underneath
So tell folks about this, please, and why it's important.
Well, guys, the sky is not falling, but and I got to tell you too. Yeah, we're just going back to pre-COVID levels. I mean, the president himself has said, "Hey, COVID's over," and so we're cutting spending a pretty good clip. But honestly, guys, I mean, I don't want to pat ourselves on the back too much. It'll be one of the biggest spending cuts in history. But we ran away spending under COVID. We spent more money on COVID than we did fighting World War II in today's dollars. So we have to dial back that spending. And so they use fear. They always use fear. But the things we're doing are making sense. Clawing back the unspent COVID money, doing away with the 87,000 IRS agents. Nobody wants the IRS being weaponized and continue to just come after the American taxpayer. And this government, when they had money and they continue to abuse power, they're woke and weaponized against conservatives. And so why on earth would we just give them more money to abuse the American taxpayer?
Yeah, I think, too, when you're talking about this stuff, what I liked about the Limit, Save, and Grow Act is that it is very it's unbelievably reasonable. You're not cutting anything. You're leaving room for growth, but room for the economy to then outgrow those spending increases. And in 20, 30 years, whatever, we would eventually erase the debt that way, right?
Absolutely. I mean, over time, and that's how you do it. We've had this debate. I'm a House Freedom Caucus guy, and we've had this debate behind closed doors that, we're not doing enough, but you had a valid point. One piece of the pie at the time. We didn't get here overnight, and they abused COVID to get to where we're at. But this thing just doesn't stop with today. We've got appropriations. We've got other things, other tools in our toolbox, if you will. I like to call it our war chest, to come after this runaway spending. And, guys, there is no government program better than just cutting taxes and regulations and letting the American economy, capitalism, create the jobs in the private sector. That, my friend, grows the government. Or grows the tax revenues and grows the economy. Government, we simply print money in D.C. When we spend, it's just ink on paper. And as we do that, the dollar that you work for every day, wherever you're working, gets devalued because we're just producing trouble up here, ink on paper, and it devalues the American consumer's dollar. And when we see that in the grocery store, at the gas station, never mind our domestic energy policy and how horrible it is, we can talk about that at another point. But anything we can do to get government out of the way, free the country to grow the economy. There's no system in the world like capitalism. Although it's not perfect, it is a really good system. If we let it go, it'll do great things.
We've seen with the last three presidential administrations, Obama said 2% growth, 2.5% was the new normal. Trump cut taxes, cleared the way for a lot of regulatory agencies, got them off of people's backs. We jumped way up over 5% again. And now after the post-COVID recovery, we're seeing the GDP growth rate under Biden slip down back into that 2%, under 2% range. How do people not see this, and how do we make a better case to the American public that we need to cut taxes and regulations and create that growth for their future?
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes was Ronald Reagan said, the government's idea on the economy is when it's moving, you tax it. If it keeps moving, you regulate it. When it fails, you subsidize it. And if we would get the taxes and regulations out of the way, Trump proved this with his tax cuts and just cut away a lot of the regulations. Man, the industry and the business, the economy will grow, and it'll do what it needs to do. And I don't know how we do a better job of talking about it. It'd be nice if we had honest media in this country. That would be a good step in the right direction. But honestly, just the people need to realize that there is no program that the government can do like a job. And so if we put a family to work, we put individuals to work, there's something about that self-esteem and that opportunity. And they grow, and then the business owners, if they've got more money, they reinvest in the economy. And guys, listen, I'm in the garbage business. I was in the trash business before I got elected to politics. I tell everybody it's easy transition to make, but I saw how the government just crippled industry, And if we could just get government out of the way, it's one of the reasons I ran. Man, the free markets will do wonderful things. And Reagan said that a rising tide raises all boats. I believe that. Everybody's better when we got less government, less taxes, less regulations, and a free market.
Well, absolutely. I mean, for example, in this bill, the Limit, Save, and Grow Act, there is, I didn't know this, that was passed, obviously, and you're pulling it back. There was an electric vehicle tax break, which if families making $300,000 can get a $7,500 tax break to buy a luxury electric car. I mean, that's insane. How do they justify that?
There is no justification. It just cripples the economy. And it concerns me. I mean, listen, guys, Joe Biden, those guys, the party has been hijacked by these environmentalist lefties. And Biden's energy policy from day one is he just shut down the Keystone Pipeline. That killed 12,000 American jobs, 8,000 union jobs. And then he gives Putin a green light on Nord Stream 2, which I believe allowed him to invade Ukraine, if you will. And then he begs OPEC to increase production and wants to buy solar panels from China. China's going to control a lot of the rare earth minerals to build these batteries. We're going to continue to make those guys our overlords in energy if we continue to cripple American economies and try to go to this green initiative where we know the technology's not there in time. But hey, listen, we've got clean energy. We need to produce it here, and we need to let this economy grow, and we don't need to depend on any other nation. I think we learned from COVID. We better become independent, not only in energy, but in production, manufacturing, and all the above.
We're speaking right now with Congressman Barry Moore of Alabama's 2nd District. Congressman, one of the things you touched on there, the EVs and all these subsidies, Biden's administration just announced new CAFE standards that basically make it impossible for manufacturers to continue manufacturing internal combustion vehicles. The problem is that neither the mining capacity, the battery building capacity, or the energy capacity are there to actually achieve what they're trying to do in any kind of time frame like they're trying to do it. How do we push back on that?
So I think we just have to take a common sense approach. And I've talked to electric cooperatives in my district. They're like, man, for every F-150 electric truck you plug in on the grid, we knock four neighbors' houses off. And so, people have to realize this is not the panacea. It's not going to be the solution. And it's like when we were growing up, y'all remember we going out the door and the parents would say, hey, turn the light off. And at the time, we looked at them like, why? It was an economic decision. The older we got, yeah, it's great if we're saving energy, but it's about dollars, and you cannot force economic. The government never does well trying to force decisions like this. Private sector needs to drive these decisions. It does not to be. Anytime government gets involved, we kind of mess up supply and demand curves. And the problem is we're going to create a lot of demand with no supply. Prices are going to go through the roof, and it's going to make it harder on actually the middle class and the lower class Americans who just can't simply afford a $60,000 electric vehicle.
60, you'd be lucky. Most of them are over 100. But I assume,
Congressman, I haven't been shopping. Give us a little time on inflation up here, buddy. We'll have that thing to 150 grand before you know it.
And Congressman, I can tell by your voice, and you're from Alabama, there is no doubt where you grew up, you got yelled at for leaving the door open more than once.
The door, I was not raised in a barn. Mama reminded me of that often.
Okay, tell us a little bit about fixing the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA. What needs to be done to fix that? It seems to be taking a little bit more interest in people's private lives than it should have.
Yeah, I think we learned, guys, and I tell you, I believe this truly. If Hillary Clinton had won, we had no idea how weaponized and how abusive agencies within our government would be against conservatives. I mean, we knew the IRS under Obama kind of came after the Tea Party. We saw that kind of unfold, I think. But, man, once they started spying on Trump's campaign and they used these FISA warrants and the Patriot Act and all this stuff, the more and more, and then they go to these judges and the FBI just abuse that power. So we're now looking at how do we limit and make sure that there's oversight, whether it's the Inspector General or whoever. Hey, guys, we got to make sure that this government cannot continue to spy on American citizens. So there's a lot of things at stake. Jim Jordan asked me to join Judiciary, and like I told you guys, I was actually a garbage man. I said, Jim, this is out of my element. He's like, hey, look, man, Grassley's a farmer and the Senate does a great job. I think you'll be a great team player and be able to help us. But yeah, as we watch this stuff develop, I'm like, yeah, this is really an interesting committee. But also, you realize just how abusive government has become, whether it's the ATF or the IRS, and certainly the FBI, spying on Trump's campaign the way they did. If Clinton would have won, we'd have never known any of this stuff. So if nothing else, I think one of the great things that Trump did is he pulled the veil back on the abuses within the swamp itself.
Interesting tidbit on Grassley. I was talking to a friend who knows him quite well and says, no, Grassley actually has a working farm. The son runs it now. I mean, he's actually a farmer. Some people, they're gentleman farmers, as you know, probably plenty of those in Alabama. He's actually a real farmer that produces something. So little tidbit there on Grassley. Let me ask you this quickly about Ukraine, then I want to move on to the ATF. We've given them $113 billion. Look, I think there's legitimate gripes that Ukraine has a corrupt government and country in many ways. It's also legitimate because it's not mutually exclusive that we just can't let Russia do this type of thing because it doesn't stop at Ukraine. But we've given them $113 billion. Isn't it time that we just go to our NATO allies and say, guys, the next 113 is all on you? I mean, what do we do for the taxpayer, but at the same time tell Russia this is unacceptable?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing, and I was in Ukraine before all this happened, guys, before the invasion, and I was talking to the parliament and some of the leaders, and I said, are y'all worried about our energy policy and the Nord Stream 2 pipeline giving Putin money to make war? And I could tell, especially from the parliament, that not so much the embassy, but from the parliament, those guys will tell you that was going to be a huge problem. And then the way we did in Afghanistan at the end of August, the way it fell, at that point it triggered, then Putin knew that the U.S. is weak and that this is a time to move. And so, yeah, they mobilized, they invaded Ukraine. And as we're sitting here, I'm looking through this process and I'm like, $113 billion is a lot of money for a young democracy, you know. So Ukraine's pretty young, and so there needs to be some oversight. But I certainly agree, and I've been against the funding for the whole time because I think there needs to be oversight, and I think there's abuses because this is the same group of people that told us $4 billion was too much for a border wall. And
right.
Yet we spent $113 billion in Ukraine, and we still don't know if the American taxpayer is going to win on this deal. So for sure we need some oversight. So let's don't spend any more money over there. But I think you got a valid point. Hey, guys, the rest is on our allies, and we need to sit back and figure out where all this money went and try to claw some of that back if it's been abused or if it's still out there. Because I have talked to soldiers in Ukraine, in the zone, if you will, and they're just parking equipment at night in fields, and people are picking it up. We really don't know where it's all going.
Well, it comes so fast, and there's no structure, right? I mean, you're a businessman. You ran garbage. You had routes, right? Unless there's a plan, you're picking up the wrong garbage.
And guys, it's like the COVID money. I mean, $783 million went to federal prisoners. $1,400 stimulus checks went to some Japanese citizens. You know, when you push money out of the government so fast, dude, corruption's bound to abound. They can't even manage it when they've got time to look at it.
Man, a Japanese citizen can get one, and I can't.
Imagine that. Yeah, no, if you're paying your taxes, buddy, and doing like you're supposed to, you can hang it up.
Quickly, we have 1 minute left. Tell us about what you're doing about oversight of the ATF.
Yeah, so we're on this pistol brace thing, man. We're about to we feel like the ATF's kind of abusing that rule. The pistol brace has been around for over a decade, and all of a sudden they're going to try to make felons out of American citizens. And we think there's about at least 10 million people who own these braces who are going to become felons on May 31st. So we're going to try to pass a law to tell the ATF, oh, no, you don't. But we've had some hearings on that, and we've had the director in a couple of times, and we're going to start reeling some of this runaway crazy guy.
Thank you, Congressman, for doing that, because obviously I have a lot of friends who are big, Second Amendment supporters who have a lot of weapons. Democrats are so incomprehensible on this issue because they don't understand firearms. They don't understand how they work, and this is how you get these attacks on things like the pistol brace.
Well, they also don't understand human behavior. That's the biggest problem with this.
That's exactly right?
Yeah, absolutely. Congressman Barry Moore of Alabama, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciated having you on the program. Look forward to having you on again in the future. Folks, you can follow him at Rep. Barry Moore on Twitter or on Facebook. Congressman, thank you again, and thank you for all the work you're doing.
No doubt. Thank you, guys.
And you're clear.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds with your host, Chuck Warren. I'm Sam Stone. Fantastic program and guest today, Chuck. Really has been wonderful conversation so far, and another one coming up right now. On the line with us, Ken LaCorte. Has a fantastic Substack that you and I have been following for some time now, and he did what I thought was one of the more reasonable, insightful pieces on what happened with Tucker Carlson.
Treat your viewers right. That's what you called it. So tell us, what did Fox do to him?
Well, the tricky thing on this is we don't really know yet why Fox News fired Tucker Carlson. We know it was abrupt. We know that on Friday he said, "I'll see you next Monday," and then on Monday they pulled the rug out from him, and minutes later sent out a press release. So it was a sandbagging on him. My gut doesn't tell me that there's going to be some great, oh my gosh, terrible thing that he's done. If I had to guess right now, it is just to the Murdochs, he became more trouble than he was worth. The New York Times does a bashing story on him. Basically every month they redo the Tucker Carlson racist. He's a sexist. He's a bad person, and in a crazy way. Now, one thing though that the Murdochs probably know is the media will always choose the top Fox News person and paint him or her as an awful person. Do you remember when Bill O'Reilly was the absolutely worst person in the world, according to mainstream media?
Yes.
Oh, do you
barely a human being. Barely a human being.
It just does that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
He was barely a human being, according to the New York Times or O'Reilly. I mean, he was just the worst guy in the world.
So in this instance, we don't really know. But what we do know is that Fox is having a trust issue with its audience. And how do I say? I think the current leadership there got there not through making big, bold actions, but that they were the management that, when bad things happened, or they were the ones that kept their fingers off the knives. They were the ones that didn't upset the boat. When you have corporate restructurings, it's usually the people who have gotten in arguments with other people or pushed something really hard. They're the ones that get wiped out, and you're left with a more bureaucratic group, let's say, than the original people. And so I think that there's a lot of so you've got basically now, Rupert and to an extent his son Lachlan running it. It's basically a family business, even though technically, they don't own the whole thing. They own enough of it to make it a family business. And many of the other executives at Fox News now are what you call lever pullers. Yes, boss, I'll take care of this and do that. And you've seen kind of a lack of vision between Fox understanding its audience and what to do with it. You saw them make some bobbles in the last election, not felonies. The Arizona call, for instance, was something they never really fully explained. They, Chris Wallace brought a very, very liberal point of view to the debate. In the post Trump saying the election was stolen, they were caught because all their reporters were saying, look, we're looking into this and there's nothing here. Every time you dig in, and I've done it myself, and now half of your viewers hate me, but every time I've dug into this election was stolen and these machines or the Sharpies there, this or that, it always has come up dry for me. So they had their news division doing that, but then they had a lot of their hosts winking and nodding and playing into that. And it left a dichotomy where now a large number of Fox's viewers thinks Fox is lying to them. And now when you do this, you take Tucker Carlson was in people's houses every night of the week for an hour talking to them. You get a relationship with somebody like that. They yank him out. All of a sudden, your best friend is not in your house anymore at 8 p.m., and nobody's telling you why or apologizing or saying, well, but at least he did something awful. It's a bit of a disrespect to their viewers.
So you're a former Fox News executive. What happens to the conservative media news outlets? What do you see a trend going in the future? Does Fox do okay, which I think they do long run? I mean, I just think that's what happens. But, are you really going to go on OAN? Things of that nature. I mean, what happens?
So look, Fox is in a mathematically wonderful position right now. Half the country likes hamburgers. Half the country likes hot dogs, right? And there's a bunch of other channels selling hamburgers, and they're the only real ones selling hot dogs. So what restaurant, they're going to get about 50% of the cable news audience. And when you look at them over time, they get about 50% of the cable news audience. And CNN, MSNBC, and Headline News, they split up the rest on that. The only real way that could be changed, I mean, nobody's going to be like, all right, I've had enough Fox News. I'm going to start watching CNN. I mean, no human being is going to do that. The only option, the only two possibilities are, one, over time we know cable news will reduce itself in popularity. Your kids aren't going to be watching cable news; they're going to be watching the computers and having Roku and crap hooked up into theirs. But my dad is never going to not do anything else. He's going to sit there. He's going to sit in front of his chair that he's always sat in. He's going to grab his remote and he's going to turn on to one channel. So the only really potential short term, I'd say 10-year upsetting of that apple cart would be if one of the conservative channels took fire and got better. Right now, so OAN is basically fizzled and is out of there. News Nation is a new one that most people haven't heard of, that's really trying to be kind of like the old Fox. Hey, we got liberals, we got conservatives, we're fair and balanced. We have Hannity and Combs.
Correct.
And then everybody talks about Newsmax, which is everything Donald Trump and Republicans say is 100% right, and you're an idiot if you don't believe it. And positionally, it makes sense for them to be to the right of Fox, but Newsmax does every single other thing wrong. Their graphics are terrible. Their hosts aren't all that interesting. Their reporters look like they're little kids who are pretending to shave, wearing their dad's coat. It just and
that is the best takedown of Newsmax I've ever heard.
It's kind of true, man.
It's totally true.
It's just like, just see like the little 5-year-old boy pretending to shave himself, and he's got
suits two sizes too big.
Exactly. And positionally, they've gone, with the exception of Greta and maybe a couple other hosts there, they've just been like, everything Republicans say doesn't stink. And while people kind of want that and they say they want that, they really don't. I know hardcore conservative people who are like, you know what? It feels to me like a GOP propaganda outlet, and I'm I'm talking like hardcore conservative.
I still go to LD meetings. I get enough of that in person.
So it's like if CNN actually got fairer and it would take them 10 years to be accepted on that could be a problem. I'm not worried about that because they just won't do it. But if Newsmax got smarter, they could be a potential. I've told Tucker that he should try to get the old band back together and see what he can do. To find Greta, see what O'Reilly's up to. He's on YouTube somewhere. You get Tucker at 8:00 on some cable channel. With a couple of those other people, you take away a third of Fox's news. You have $1 billion, $3 billion effort.
So I tell you what I would love to see is those guys combine their efforts with some of this, like Matt Taibbi, Glenn Greenwald, the left-leaning outsiders.
You still mean. So, for example, as you being a Fox News executive, one other point. So, I have a lot, true blue Republicans like you, who just will not give Newsmax or these other ones a time of day. Just first of all, the branding of the name now just says, these are whack jobs. These are not my people. I don't want to talk to them, right? I don't want to hear from them. So, part of this seems to be a branding problem as well. So I think what you're saying is right. If they can somehow figure something out like that, that probably really takes off. And I do think there's room for that and Fox as well.
Yeah, I do. Look, conservatives deserve to have more than one big news channel.
Correct.
That's a thought. Now look, it's not easy to launch a news channel. You could argue that Fox News was one of the last successful ones done, and that was 27 years ago or something crazy like that. Rupert spent $1 billion out the gate on that, just in distribution. It is hard to you can't just buy that. You can't just say, oh, we now have a channel and we want it to be in 70 million households across the country. You can get onto Sirius, you can get onto some of the others. You can try to buy one and flip it, but now a lot of cable operators have gotten wise to that and written into their contracts that you can't do that. That's what Current TV turned into Al Jazeera. Certain things like that you just can't do anymore. So if you're a billionaire type investor, two things. That, again, my kids aren't going to be watching cable news, so there's a limited window on that. But you also know the short-term money that these, and when I say short-term, I mean at least a month, or at least a decade, that you make huge money in cable. Fox News probably is netting around $2 billion a year. That's with a B. That's $2,000 million a year. That's after they pay their bills and their sexual harassment lawsuits and O'Reilly's salary and Rupert's plane. That's a massive amount of money. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, CNN, they're down in the dumps, and MSNBC is nothing. Those two operations combined profit about $1.2 billion. So you got let's just call it $3.3 billion yearly profit for three companies. That's big money.
And that makes me laugh more when I read stories like Out of the Puck about how CNN's cutting travel expenses. Like, we're going to cut our travel expenses $100,000 a year. This is going to turn everything around.
Dude, we always did it at Fox News too, because part of it was, I worked there under the Roger Ailes era. And, Rupert would say, Roger, if you make this much more money, you get this much more of a bonus. And we're talking millions of dollars of bonus, right? So he always hit his numbers. So it was like, yeah, we're using, it's like, you look at it and it's like we're making money that you just couldn't even imagine seeing a spigot of money this big in the world. And, we're photocopying paper on two sides to save 4 cents here and there. That's the wonders of corporate America.
Two final questions before we let you go for the day. First of all, in the conservative media universe, who do you see who's a rising star that people should keep an eye on, in your opinion?
I had a talk yesterday with one of the Fox News hosts, one of the primetime hosts, who was like, "Who do we get?" You look around and you're like, who could replace Tucker? Who could be that? I mean, do you really want a Candace Owens? Do you want it's like, I love Brian Kilmeade. He's a good guy, but nobody's going to be like, "Oh, I gotta get home to see what Brian Kilmeade is saying."
He's doing exactly what he should be doing.
To me, I don't know if I would call them rising stars or conservative. To me, the two interesting choices that Fox News could shake it up, but I don't think they want to shake things up anymore. I think they're a bunch of bureaucrats now. One would be Jordan Peterson.
Oh.
And, you'd probably have to pay him $50 million a year. And he's not I'm going to give you a monologue like Tucker, but imagine Jordan Peterson coming into your house doing interviews on there.
Right.
He is wildly popular among the same people who should be, and the future people who should be wildly popular with Fox News. The other one would be Ben Shapiro, who's again got his own deal. He's a fast talking this and that, but one of the smartest conservatives out there, and says things that you go and click to hear him say. Those are the only two out of the entire market that I know of.
I'm going to throw someone else in there because we were kind of talking about this before the show today, but what about a guy like Vivek Ramaswamy coming off of a presidential run? He's entertaining, he's interesting, and he brings a different
and the reason
perspective.
Sam brings that up, we were talking, I've had 9 calls the past 2 weeks from who are just Republican voters. They're not volunteering for a campaign. They're not defending Trump on Twitter. And they have personally asked me about him. I mean, I just called me, and that's the question they asked. I said, tell me about him. I find him really interesting.
Guys, you cold cocked me on here. I don't think I've heard him say 5 words there. You hear like, oh, some guy you've never heard of is running for president. I'm like, I'm going to run for president so I can just say presidential candidate on my resume.
Please do, and announce it
he
here.
may be great.
Hey, look, here in Arizona, it's like $25 and you can do that, Cam.
Speaking about running for office, which apparently you're considering now, before I let you go, what do you think? So we have really, it seems like a DeSantis-Trump war, but I think we have some good candidates like Tim Scott and others. What do you see coming to this? Is Trump just going to get this no matter what? Do you see somebody else possibly rising and making this interesting? What are your 2 cents on that?
My 2 cents are that Trump is probably at around, among Republicans, is probably in the high 40%. Let's say 45 to 48% they're going to vote for him, which means that there's 52, 53% who won't vote for him because they've had enough, in their opinion, of his nonsense. If that is split up by 5 candidates, Trump wins.
Correct.
And he is the nominee. And then it's like, oh my gosh, is it crazy Trump or senile president? It's something crazy. I think that DeSantis right now is the only person who could be the alternative to Trump, and for him to be successful. And these people won't drop out soon, but after the first couple states, just like what we saw in the Democrats last year when Bernie Sanders started taking it away or different. Eventually, if the path forward for DeSantis, and I don't think anybody else can do it unless something radically changes, is that the first couple states, the other Republicans see what's going on, and all of their supporters say, get out of this race, or you're going to assure that Donald Trump is still in it. And if it was a 1-to-1, DeSantis, it would be a tight fight on that. But with 5 other candidates drawing 5% apiece, Trump walks away.
Well, Sam, any other questions?
No,
our
it's
distinguished guests go.
Great stuff.
How do people find your writings? How do they find you on social media? Let's spread the news.
Sure. Best thing is my name is Ken LaCorte. It's LaCorte. I've got a Substack that I write up media stuff and whatnot, and I've got a YouTube page that I'm rebranding to called Elephants in Rooms, which is just talking about uncomfortable concepts that you're not supposed to talk about, but in a friendly and interesting way.
Well, we'll look forward to checking that one
out.
And
we will be pimping that on our social media, so people go visit it.
Excellent.
We appreciate you.
Excellent. And I'd love to do this anytime. You guys are fun to chat with.
Thank you. We look forward to having you back on soon. Have a great weekend.
All right.
Take care. Sam, good guests today.
Yeah, no, really, really good guests today. I thought all three of them were fantastic. I thought they brought really good viewpoints to the show. It's been an interesting week in politics.
It is. Jeremy, why don't you go ahead and run the clip from Randy Weingarten, probably the enemy of kids of America. Go ahead.
The problem is that teachers actually teach kids. So if it wasn't, look at what happened in Omicron. When we were able, because of testing, we were able to actually keep schools open. Some schools shut when there were too many teachers absent, but we were able to keep schools open because we understood and used testing as a way to do that. So I think what happened was that people were fearful. You're absolutely right. But even though, thank God, kids didn't get as sick as adults, adults were getting sick and adults were dying. And so we were trying to figure out, and I'm not saying that, there were people all across America who were taking different positions than, I was at the AFT, including some of my members, and you saw some of those things. But we were trying to figure out what were the mitigating strategies that were needed to keep schools open. And that's what, and that's what we tried to do from April 2020. And what I produced, I went and I testified in Congress yesterday voluntarily, and I produced much documentation proving all the things that we tried to say. Now, that's why I keep on using the Cuomo administration, because frankly, Governor Hogan, Governor Cuomo, Rockefeller Foundation, lots of governors, they were working in a really different way than the Trump administration was. And the Trump administration did a great job in terms of vaccines. But in terms of giving...
This woman is awful, and every word she's saying is a lie. She wants to blame the Trump administration.
She literally lies every day about this topic.
Every single day.
And the problem is she doesn't realize in 2023 we have so many comments of her taped, recorded, written that contradict what she's trying to spin now.
Well, but she knows that the liberal media is going to spin this right alongside her. They're going to help her try to do that. The problem is, you go back, I pulled up an article when we were talking about this. I pulled up an article from the Foundation for Economic Excellence from summer of 2021. Okay. In there, she's still saying, we need all these preconditions before we can open schools in the fall of 2021. And they're pointing out all the ways at that point that she was opposed to any kind of opening. And she says, if you go on with this clip, she says, well, we didn't get all the information from Trump like we did from, Europe did from their leaders. Bull. That is absolutely bull. Heritage Foundation did a study also about that same time period, looked at 130 studies on COVID, its impact on kids, its impact on adults, and all this sort of thing, the risks for reopening schools. 130 studies all said it's not a problem. You can reopen schools. It's safe. The issue with adults is largely with adults who are, by the way, too old to be teaching in our schools. You don't have a lot of 85-year-olds running around public schools. Okay, so every word she said there is a lie, and the fact that some people are trying to let her get away with this. I mean, if she could, they'd all still go back to blame Bush. I mean, anything to avoid taking credit for their own bad actions, and accountability is not there. It is not there. She serves one constituency only.
She serves a union.
She serves her teachers.
Yeah.
And They are a radicalized group that runs it. They don't even particularly represent most of their teachers all that well. This is a far-left radical organization that led the way. She was the number one voice for keeping schools closed for 2.5 years.
I mean, let's be blunt about it. She would have kept schools shut down in 2022.
Oh, absolutely.
No question in my mind.
If she had control and there was no pushback, your kids would still not be in school today. They would still be on remote learning today. The only reason she's doing this is because they got caught.
She is the worst we have in society, especially when they tried to pretend that they truly care about these children's education.
Oh, yeah, look, I think she's a sociopath. I mean, I look at her and I see someone who is actively harming the children of America repeatedly. It's not just the COVID closures, but it's so much else.
And this brings up an interesting point. So, folks, you can disagree with her policy, and they're bad, right? But you can't take the Marjorie Taylor Greene approach like, well, you're not a real mom, you're a stepmom. I mean, that's the type of stuff that just absolutely ruins an argument. Stop making such ridiculous claims and insinuations, okay? That's not fair, it's not right, it's not even intellectually sound, right? One last item before we break off today. So, Dan Clifton crunched some brand new IRS income migration numbers from 2020 and 2021. So, as we all know, we have a big presence in Florida. Florida gained a staggering $63 billion in income from migration in those 2 years, a 5% boost in state personal income. Texas was second biggest state income gainer at $17 billion. The big losers, California, New York, and Illinois. Manhattan alone lost $31 billion in income.
Yeah, it's look, the real clear reality of America today is that red states are good places to live and work and build a business and a family, and blue states are not. That's all there is to it. And the argument, look, it's only the kerfluffle around Trump and the elections and all this other stuff and the media landscape. If those things weren't in the way, if people were given an honest accounting by the press of what's going on in this country and around the world and that kind of thing, Democrats would be run out of office in all 50 states.
But we can't get past it when we have people pushing, well, you're a stepmom, so you're not a real mom.
No, that's garbage. You have to stop with that kind of stuff, and we have to focus on the basics.
Just the issues. If people knew the actual issues, Republicans would have a majority in both.
You're safer walking down the street in a city in a red state than you are in a blue state. Your kids are safer in school in a red state than a blue state. Your kids are getting a more fundamentally basic, balanced education in a red state versus a blue state. All of this stuff that they're talking about now, I mean, it's telling that the school lobby, the teachers union lobby, rates schools on teacher pay, but not on outcomes.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. It's incredible. Well, folks, thank you for joining us this weekend. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please check us out at breakingbattlegrounds.vote and all our social media. Share it with your friends. Give us a good rating. Have a great weekend.
Running for office? You need a campaign website. Introducing the web address of the democratic process, .vote. So how do you purchase your .vote website? Visit www.yourname.vote. Type your website name, example www.johnsmith.vote. It's available. Add your web address to your cart and check out. Once checked out and have received confirmation, you may begin to create and utilize your website to connect and engage voters. To learn more, visit get.vote. Happy campaigning!